Despite the fact that George Osborne scathing about what the Labour government had done, the markets are telling us something very different, even in the last 3 weeks, which people have been saying potentially signals the fact that we've slowed down a little bit, concern over the pace of the rally. We're still up 5%, 250 points in the last few weeks. I mean, the markets seem to believe that things are slightly more optimistic than Mr Osborne does.
Well, the markets are always, of course, forward-looking. I mean, I think if I'd been in the Shadow Chancellor's shoes, what I would have done is been a lot more optimistic about the future, rather than looking backwards and criticising the present administration. And the reason for that is I suspect people want to hear a bit more about the old land of hope and glory side of things, which they're used to from the Tories. And in particular, I would have said, well, I'm going to knock down taxation rates, basically shifted the mix we have from fiscal and monetary policy, reduce the higher rate of personal tax, reduce corporate tax, because that is what he's talking about in terms of improving confidence and investment, and be looking to give signals to the Bank of England that it'd be a lot happier if interest rates were slightly higher.
I mean, you say the Tories should be more optimistic. Alpesh, you've been looking at this economy for many, many years. For us to go from an economy which is dominated by spending, it is a real leap of faith, as Annabelle was saying, really, perhaps to become savers. Are you convinced that we're going to do that on a longer-term period?
Well, as we all know, people change by precisely 5% for 5 minutes, so I'm sure this will last for all of 5 minutes.
So you're not convinced?
I'm not convinced. I would hope that people do get, retail investors do get a large part of their portfolio into equities, because on a historical asset allocation basis, they've tended to be underinvested in equities for either lack of education or for whatever other reason there is why they're not as invested in equities as they ought to be as part of their portfolio. They've tended to be over-invested in properties, and you can understand why. Yeah. I hope this doesn't mean that we've seen the top of the rally and that retail investors are not being their usual contrarian indicator, and as their confidence levels spike, it also tells us where the market's about to top. I'd like to think they're going to shore up any market declines.
Alpesh is pretty pessimistic on the longevity of this as well. I mean, are people more educated now about what they're doing? Are the products out there to encourage people to save and get involved in the stock market over a longer-term period? I mean, ISAs is something you've drawn attention to.
Well, actually, I mean, Alpesh had said that historically, he's hoping that they do move into equities. And I think, as I said, at the moment, people have just suffered dreadfully financially through this crisis. And therefore, they're doing a lot more research and educating themselves a lot more. And, you know, obviously, I think the internet has made a massive difference to people's financial education and how they can research products. So I do think that is having a big impact. I mean, the other point I really would like to make is that active investors, and these are the more sophisticated investors, they're the ones who are really taking more risk now. And if you look at the sort of sectors they're interested in smaller companies, they're interested in financials, in terms of emerging markets is a big player. So they really are looking for quite specific things which they're looking to invest in.
Super. We've got to leave it there.
Excellent.
Very nice to see you today.
Very good to see you.
Annabelle Brodie-Smith, Director of the Association of Investment Companies.